afternoon and welcome to BDTV Roundtable. This is where we discuss issues that affect us in our economy, be they political, social, or economy issues. Today we'll be looking at two issues, and these are the ongoing disputes between the Dangote Group and NUPENG. NUPENG is the Nigerian Union of Petroleum workers, and of course it is getting larger. I mean, because other union in that sector are also coming in to side NUPENG, and that's Pengasan and even other transport unions. What are the issues? We get to know, and of course we also touch on the demand by the Nigerian Labour Congress, which is another issue that is also coming up for a review of the 70,000 national minimum wage that was that came into force last year. These are the two issues we are going to discuss today, and with me in the studio to do justice to these are two gentlemen: the deputy editor of BusinessDay, Mr. Odinaka Anudu, and of course I also have with me Dipo, Oladehinde, who is an assistant editor here at BusinessDay. Of course, Dipo, we're going to have a lot. We're going to have a lot of you this today, because the issues that one of the issues we want to discuss today has to do with the oil and gas, sector where you actually cover. And so, well, let's get to it. As we speak, there was a meeting that was called yesterday by the Minister of Labour and Employment in Abuja, just to see how the dispute between the Dangote Group and the NUPENG can be resolved, so that Nigeria will not run into a situation where we begin to go queue or begin to go here and there looking for fuel. Because as we speak, fuel supply could be threatened if the issue is not resolved as quickly as possible. Well, we will discuss that today. Perhaps I will start with Dipo. What's your take on the issues that NUPENG is taking up with the Dangote? What your take on that is, really, because NUPENG actually is accusing Dangote of anti-union recruitment, in the anti-union activity of not allowing those being recruited as the drivers of the truck that Dangote is bringing in to join labor union. Of course, really, there's also allegation of not trying to monopolize, so to say, fuel distribution. But Dipo, one would have expected one would have expected that what the Dangote is trying to do, the Dangote Refinery is trying to do, I mean, just telling people, look, if you have a filling station, just don't bother yourself about, buying trucks, engaging drivers. Just buy, and I'm bringing in trucks to be able to distribute, bring fuel to you directly. And so one would have expected that such a move will actually be welcomed by Nigerians. But of course, we are seeing a situation where it looks as if some people are saying, look, we're going to take our job, something like that. I don't know. So, but I would have thought that should actually be a welcome development, where you don't have to just bother yourself, just get a filling station, just go by, and then you get fuel supplied to you directly. And so that takes the burden of you buying tanker, of you engaging drivers, and all of the other risks associated with moving a truck and moving fuel along the road. That takes all of what Dangote is trying to do. It takes all of that burden away. But here, there's opposition. Dipo, how do you see this?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you once again for having me. And so my view is, look, if these unions they've been around for a long time, and so there would always anything that threatens any union, you'll find them coming out and trying to air their view or try to air their opinions about, 10,000 trucks. We are looking at 10,000 trucks. We are looking at 10,000 drivers.
Yeah.
onboarding a new truck into any of these union, of course, it costs money. You pay dues to, you pay levies to these unions, you pay dues. A friend of mine was doing the math, and the estimate that was being shared with me was it cost about ₦1 million to onboard a brand new truck into a NUPENG association. So probably the NUPENG officials are looking at the scale of, look, adding 10,000 members to us is, I mean, it would boost the coffers of
It should actually be more than 10 because each truck will have a driver and a motorboy.
And a motorboy,
Yeah.
exactly. So, of course, it will strengthen the union, make them more visible, give them more authority, because if the members of Dangote's refinery are also a member of the union, it means they have a stronger voice, a stronger role to play in the economy, and as the case may be. But we'll see a Dangote resisting, probably because he doesn't want any sort of external interference into the operations of the refinery. Let's not forget that this is a $20 billion refinery. Yeah. This is a refinery that can't afford any form of strike, which is pertinent to unions like NUPENG, where they are either aligning with the NLC when it comes to, so the Nigerian Labour Congress, for instance, might want to go on strike, and you find officials of NUPENG just showing solidarity with them, even if the issues concerned are not affected. And so you find the refinery just trying to protect their interest and just trying to protect how they would make sure the refinery is up and running, as the case may be. But I think that's where the bone of contention is. And then towards yesterday's meeting, what we gathered was the fact that, when the minister summoned the meeting, you would expect there should be some element of ground shifting from both parties. So what we do here is Dangote has really allowed for his members to be a part of the union. But I think the bottleneck still remains on drafting of the communique or drafting of the memorandum of understanding between what was agreed. I think that was where the major challenge would be. And so, I mean, issues like this are not, petroleum products are very significant to the economy, because once there's no efficiency in terms of supplying of these products, you're not just looking at transportation sector alone, you're also looking at banks who are reliant on diesel, you're looking at industries who are relying on diesel to run their operation. All of this is going to be affected if the strike really it's hit the ground running. So you would expect the government to interfere and be more proactive, rather than us wait till we get to this bridge before they start trying to solve the issues. But hopefully before the end of the week, we hope this can be solved.
Okay, Odinaka, let's have your take.
No, my point is that shutting down an economy like Nigeria's will cost us some more than $1 trillion, because our GDP is about 370 something trillion. So if you look at that, if you shut down an economy like Nigeria's a day, you're going to lose like over ₦1 trillion. So that means that you have to do everything possible to ensure that you do not shut down the economy. So my own take here is that, in the first place, Dangote is trying to protect itself. Dangote Refinery is trying to protect itself. NUPENG, on the other hand, is also trying to ensure that its right to freedom of association is not limited or restricted by Dangote. There is this concept of the bourgeois. Bourgeois and the proletariat. If you look at stories about those who understand Marxists, they believe so much that there is the bourgeois. The bourgeois always try as much as possible as much as they can, to trample upon the proletariat. So the unions have painted that picture, and unfortunately, we do not hear Dangote side of the story, because they have not spoken. So what I think is that it's not correct, it's not right to stop members of the union members of the drivers from joining the union, because it tramples upon their right to freedom of association, which is constitutional. And the way Nigerian constitution works. If there's any law, anything you do edict, whether it is edict or decree, that is made somewhere else, that actually contradicts the constitution supersedes. So that's number one. Not just Dangote, every businessman must understand they have a right to freedom of association. Negotiations, and when it comes to issues about company administration, negotiations are very important. Diplomacy is very important. But I do not support the fact that you stop drivers from joining the unions because whether you like it or not, if the bourgeois actually do not allow drivers who are commoners, to look at the scale of things, they are commoners, to join unions, their interests will not be protected, because at some point, if I and the bourgeois always doing one or two things to trample upon the rights of the drivers who are the proletariats, the workers. So you probably will not see it from the side of the union now until the future, when issues begin to come on. And then if you now belong to the, I hear that there's a new group that Dangote came up with, in which they will belong. So you will not understand when crisis now begins. When those crises now begin, you now begin to see a lot of things. You know, Nigeria is something starts small. Before you know what is happening, escalates.
Yeah.
So the unions know what they are fighting for. To avoid drivers' rights being trampled upon, someone telling you that if you're giving you conditions of driving that will even be detrimental to your health or service. So they know what they are doing. They are not blind. On the other hand, Dangote knows what he's doing. He's trying to protect himself. So, but the middle ground here is that what does the Constitution say? Femi Falana has explicitly explained that, that the Constitution is about freedom of association. Don't trample upon it, no matter who you think you are in the economy. So I think everybody's trying to be selfish on their own, which is very good. I think an economist said that's while we are being selfish at different points, there comes a point where the government intervenes to ensure that our selfishness does not become an obstruction to people's welfare.
Okay, but it must be emphasized actually here that under the new Labor Act that is operational now, the right to join union actually is not automatic. Actually, there's also a window for voluntary joining the union voluntarily. If you don't want to join, actually nobody can force you to join. If you choose to join, very good. If you say I am not going to be a member of any union, of course, so nobody shall actually force you to join. Maybe that sometimes actually employers of labor actually.
Have you heard that
employers of
NUPENG or Petro or any association is forcing people to join them? It's for the interest of those who belong to those associations, because what you get from those associations are enormous. So I'm not sure that anybody has come out. I've not seen it, and you know by position to say, when I say I have not seen it in the news where someone is complaining that he's being forced to join a union. That's exactly the argument that's coming here and there, but I have not seen where a driver is saying that he's being forced to join NUPENG or join any of the associations.
Now, I'm also saying that there's also nowhere.
I know that 1990 Constitution, all those acts you see, the Constitution supersedes. There is a right to freedom of association.
Exactly.
So that right to freedom of association supersedes those acts.
Exactly.
You must allow people to. If I decide to change my church now to another church, and then you're saying no, I can't join another church. You're trampling upon my rights.
Absolutely. But Dipo, there's been so much fear about Dangote's dominance, of the industry. Apart from labor, apart from NUPENG, which is just coming up now, even ever before this one we are discussing now. Even from industry players, there's this fear of the Dangote dominating. Is this fear really real? Is it real?
Well, my view is it's a legitimate concern, really. Whether what we are witnessing is a dominance of a monopoly, it's a different thing. But are the concerns legitimate? From my view, I think so, because over time people would look at his antecedents in other sectors in which he had played in and say, oh, why is it this, for instance, this act of just taking the risks completely on yourself to deliver products directly to the end user? Why are we not seeing sugar being delivered directly to people? Why are we not seeing cement being delivered directly to people? So that's a very legitimate concern, really. But the fact is, let's also give Dangote also as well deserves a lot of credit for putting that kind of investment. Let's not forget that for oftentimes Nigeria has often bear that cost of being an oil producing country but importing all of its petroleum needs. There's no other OPEC country in the world or oil producing country in the world that doesn't have a form of refinery in his or her states or country. So he has been able to put his investments in that place and put it together, and we are beginning to see the benefits of it. Nigeria has started being a net exporter, so he's trying to protect his investment by trying to put structures in place, control the retail end, control the supply chain, control the logistics behind it, just to make sure that that investment is protected. And I mean, the point is, let's around the world, people have often advocate for the fact that let's in the process of trying to build a better country, let's not destroy what we have already. So around the world, what we've noticed is very you can't have just one energy source where you have just one refinery, because anything can happen to the refinery. Refineries are prone to maintenance, they are prone to shut down, they are prone to, so all of these risks would always happen. So what happens if you destroy all of the value chain that has been put in place prior before now? So what happens if the refinery, something happens and we need a plan B, or we need to diversify our source of getting energy? It's just check around the world. Either you are looking at Russia, you are looking at Saudi Arabia, you are looking at any of the OPEC countries. They all are not, everything is not dependent on just one stream of sourcing petroleum products. And I think that has always been the argument, that look, we need to diversify our energy source, just to make sure that first, energy is also a very, very key thing. Whoever controls your energy has the ability to control you, or has the ability to control whatever you are doing. So it's always countries around the world are always trying their best to diversify, to make sure that the economy is not dependent on one person. And so that's why people are clamoring that, look, let's still allow some elements of importation just to compete. If it's not competing in terms of prices, it's to compete in terms of quality of the product, so that the consumer at the end of the day will be the king. Let the consumer say, look, I don't want to buy imported petrol because it's no longer cheap. I want to buy a locally made petrol from Dangote Refinery. At the end of the day, let the consumer decide what he or she wants. Not we say, no, the consumer does not want imported petrol. The consumer wants refined petrol. Let the consumer decide. And if imported, if the locally refined petrol is cheaper and is more durable, of course, consumer would always move in line of where its pocket will be protected and where the quality is guaranteed. So the point I'm trying to make is the consumer should be the king, not we saying, look, let this person decide and let this person not decide.
Okay, thank you, Dipo. We'll go on a quick break now. When we return, we will continue with the conversation. Welcome back. This is still BDTV, the roundtable, where we discuss issues, and the issues we are discussing today actually the dispute between the Dangote Refinery, or the Dangote Group and NUPENG, and of course we're also going to look at the demand, fresh demand by the Nigeria Labour Congress to have the 70,000 naira minimum wage review in light of inflation and all of that. But so Odinaka, let me come to you. I'm going to ask you two questions. You want to add to what Dipo has said, but let me ask you again. If you look at the level of investment that Dangote has put in place, the $20 billion refinery and all of those things that he has put in, I think that will it not be right for him to look for every avenue to protect that business? Because oftentimes we've seen that tanker drivers, or NUPENG, of this strike, they can just go on strike, and of course, going on strike means that they can't distribute, they can't take fuel to the final consumer. And then of course, Dangote is producing. It's not like before where we were importing basically, and then you have these things stored somewhere. And then, so this man the Dangote refinery is producing, and it's huge. Yes, of course, we know that he exports, but of course, Nigeria is also a very good market for him, local market for him. And so this man is producing, and then some guy will just suddenly decide not to lift, and then because he has to store, and he's storing, he's paying, right? So it's not. So isn't that a good reason for him to look for a way to making sure that, look, nobody stops me from distributing. And again, so that's one. And the additional question I also ask you, you take them together, is that what signal does this actually send to investors? And because we see our president, of course, going around the world, inviting investors to come to Nigeria and invest and all of that. And then suddenly you're seeing a union saying, look, we want to shut down. So what kind of signal does this send to investors who may want to come to Nigeria?
See, Dangote has a right to protect. Dangote, I'm not talking about the president. Dangote Refinery has a right to protect itself. So, enormous investment, $20 billion. And unions can disrupt production from time to time. So it's actually a legitimate thing for you to begin to look after yourself. However, my point is that you don't do that to the detriment of people's rights. People have a right to freedom of association. So remember that there are different things we don't hear in the media. So Dangote will also be doing some other things to protect itself.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's wrong for him to do that. However, I think where I am against that particular move is as long as it tramples upon people's rights.
Yeah.
Because the way dictatorship starts from one level, and you overlook it, starts in the next level before you know what is happening. Dictator becomes so powerful.
Yeah.
So that's why things like this should be stopped from the outset.
Yeah.
Then so now coming to the issue of signals, there is no signal for any investor. If you go to the UK and US, there are unions. In fact, these are places. I went to the San Francisco one day. I was surprised. I saw Chinese guys who are company workers protest. And what I told myself is, San Francisco is like, it's in California, right? Yes, California. So what I told myself is, California is if California were to be a country, California is state in America, it would probably be the sixth largest in the world. So it's like Lagos of Nigeria. If you do that, even though they are on equal comparison. So I'm sure that I started asking myself, if you do that in Lagos, issues like people begin to ask questions when you protest in Nigeria. So I'm simply saying that unions are stronger outside Nigeria. Unions can shut down factories, shut down firms. So it doesn't send any, that's my opinion, it doesn't send any signal to any investor, because an investor, in fact, what it even means is that an investor coming to Nigeria should know that there are unions.
Yeah. Right.
Unions, we checkmate them. Let's not always see unions as, I don't like unions, because I don't think, like, I'm always against regular strikes. You disrupt the economy. Every day you disrupt this economy, we lose over ₦1 trillion. So you don't have to disrupt an economy, and you don't have to go on strike when you want to press home your demands. So the investor who comes into Nigeria should know that there are unions who will checkmate their activities. It will even give them confidence that they will not be acting unilaterally. Because in Nigeria and Africa, investors just come and do what they like, pick money, and then run away. I know some companies in Nigeria where investors came in, didn't produce enough. You can imagine, for instance, anyway, let me, for the sake of this interview, not mention some stuff. There were some Nigerian government-owned companies that were sold to investors. Those investors were those things, they got them at cheap rates. They didn't develop those things. They even had to started playing games with Nigerian federal government, former federal government owned. Let me use pepper mill so that you understand what I'm saying. Some of the pepper mills were sold to investors at very cheaper rates, scrap rates.
Almost like a giveaway.
If you look at them, some of them don't exist now. What some investors were doing was to go to their countries. They were using those things to they remove some of the parts, sell them. They were playing so many games. Chinese guys, Indians, but let me not mention nations so that people don't take offense. Then back to the question you asked Dipo, which is the third one. are very, very passionate about this. Dangote is an investment. He's an investor. He's a capitalist who needs return on investments. So we must do everything possible to protect Dangote. So we must not play games. This is not politics. It's economics. If Dangote remains if things remain the way they are, in the next 10 years, the economy will begin to stabilize because it was the key to FX, it was the key to fuel stability, it was key to so many things we are looking for. So let's not play games with that. However, where I have a problem is with the Nigerian government. The NNPC, for example, is supposed to be a competitor to Dangote. What's happening to our refineries? Yes, it's a small competitor. If you look at the capacities of those refineries, very small compared to Dangote. But they are actually supposed to be a competitor to Dangote. What are they doing? Is it Dangote that stopped them from producing? So another point is that all over the world, there is always, if a government tries to checkmate monopoly, in fact, companies go to court over monopolies and they lose a lot of money in courts. In the UK, in the US, so many examples. If you Google, you find that so many companies lost money because they were trying to antitrust laws. There are antitrust laws all over the world. How do we allow one person or one company to control who the leader of the Nigerian economy? The problem with that. However, it's not the fault of Dangote because nobody stopped others from going into the sector. So I'm not blaming him, but I'm saying that on our home part, why have we allowed one man to control virtually 95% of the petrol market? Now, what we are even doing is to stop imports, which is dangerous. Don't do that in an economy. People are protesting.
But what if you have the local capacity?
That's what I'm saying.
But that was his point as well.
That's what Dangote has not stopped anybody from going into the industry. It's actually the laziness. And I will give you an example. I don't want to mention names. Before Dangote became controlling more than 70% of cement market, Obasanjo, you remember what happened then? Obasanjo called all of them. It was not only Dangote. Called Dipo too. So many of them. They sat down and they said, I can only give you a license if you set up local plants. Some of them were not interested. I know one man who went to court and the court actually gave an order that will allow him to continue importing until 2017 or so. I know the man, I won't mention his name. So when you have this kind of mentality, and then Dangote becomes powerful in the cement industry, do you blame him? It's actually the system. Why do we allow one man? Because he can actually decide to stop production of petrol for 2 days. And you see crisis everywhere.
Yeah. Okay. Odinaka, thank you. Just so that our time, the producer is giving me a sign that our time is, winding down. Just so that we don't thanks so much, gentlemen, for the discussion so far on the dispute between the organized labor and the Dangote refinery. And so far, we hope that the government's intervention will actually bring about a resolution such that we won't get to a point where this guy will go on strike, and then of course they won't lift product, and then Nigerians will begin to roam around the street looking for where to buy fuel, and that would be too bad because so far, I mean, for a very long time now, Dipo, we've not seen a fuel distribution crisis, and we don't ever pray to see it, and that's why this government's intervention is very critical as far as this issue we have discussed here is concerned. But just before we wrap up, Dipo, I want to ask you, the organized labor, NLC, of course, TUC is also involved. Now I'm saying, look, the 70,000 naira that 70,000 minimum wage that the president approved last year, which some state governors are still struggling to pay, is no longer worth anything, and in the face of inflation and the high cost of living and all of that, so they're asking government to review it. Dipo, how do you see this?
I mean, I think you are very correct in terms of how many states are really implementing even the 70K we talked about now. So again, laborers are, majority of their views are always socialists in view, and they don't, sometimes laborers will make demands that are not market driven. They'll make demands that are not realistic in the true economic sense of it, because majority of it is always about appealing to their sentiments and the rest of it. But then we need to sit down and ask ourselves that how many states currently can afford to pay this 70K before we even talk about scaling up. Why do we even have a uniformity of wage in the country? Shouldn't some states who are generating more money, who have more buoyant economy, be willing to pay more, while those who are struggling to up their game in terms of what they can pay and what they can't? Why do we want to yoke every state with a certain wage bill that is difficult to maintain? Let's not forget, if you look at our yearly budget, Nigeria is one of the only countries in the world you've seen where our recurrent expenditure is taking a large chunk of our yearly budget. We don't
compared to capital expenditure.
So we are not investing in capital expenditure. I would expect the labor leaders to give a mandate to the government that let there be a quality world-class primary healthcare center in every local government in Nigeria. Can we afford it since we remove subsidy? Maybe yes, maybe not. But it's a conversation we can have. So the idea of increasing your wage bill, let's not forget that if you increase this wage bill, you are indirectly stroking inflation again, because you have more money in the economy chasing fewer goods. And the last time the former CBN governor tried to do something like that, where we were pumping money into the economy, even when there was not enough economic activity that were going on, we saw the ripple effect of that, how we went down and how inflation was rising higher and higher on a daily or on a monthly basis. So we need to be careful not to stroke another round of inflation. We need to stimulate the economy. We need to prioritize the fact that, look, a lot of states can do more in terms of economic activity. Sometimes if you take away the Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja, or maybe Kano, this is like 4 or 5 out of 36. I'm not sure if a child brings 4 over 36, any parents will be proud. So we need to make sure we have more economically viable states in the country. And we need to make sure that they are all operating at their peak level. Then the wages would always come. But let's be very careful about it. That's my view.
Thank you so much. Odinaka, just your take on this. I mean, just in a few seconds.
So the truth of the matter is that the labor unions will always struggle, agitate over salaries, but the point, like Dipo pointed out, how many states are even capable of, people are even agitating for more states. When I'm even asking for mergers of states, people are just trying to make sure they create fiefdoms where they can become powerful in those states.
Yeah.
So the truth of the matter is that many states in Nigeria even need to be merged. States like let people not get offended, but I know some states are not viable at all, and they should never have been created. So 70,000 naira. When you look at Nigeria's revenue, despite the fact that this
but isn't this demand justifiable? I mean, let's be frank. I mean, 70,000 naira.
Coming to that, when last was it increased?
That was last year now. It came into effect last year.
And then if you keep doing this thing annually.
Now, it's actually supposed to be every 5 years. So go for a review. But that's in light of inflation.
And you know,
cost of living.
Minimum. This is not their salary. It's just minimum. It means that the least person, the gatekeeper, is this. You can't earn less than this.
Exactly.
So it's not a problem. Some of them are going to be earning.
But is 70,000 naira enough for a gatekeeper?
There are in the private sector. I'm coming in the private sector. There are people who pay people up to the 40,000
and less.
So if you don't have money in the private sector, for example, are you going to start looking at? People don't look at minimum wages when they want to pay salaries. People only look at what they earn. So if at the end of the day, somebody I have somebody I know somewhere who is working for it. His salary is just 30,000. Go to the markets. Open markets. Those sales ladies, girls that work there, they earn 30,000, 25, 40. Are you talking to them about minimum wage?
Yeah, exactly. I think his point is companies pay based on what they can afford. The governments are just free money.
Anyway, but actually, minimum wage is supposed to be the least you can pay. The minimum you can pay the least of the worker in the economy in the country.
It's too early. My opinion is
and it applies both to formal and informal
Formal,
sector.
And
of the
again,
economy.
it's too early.
But-
Just
but-
raised it
yeah,
last week.
exactly.
The government is not. So
Yeah.
the economy is just recovering.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I think like Dipo said, that there can be other ways, by which government can, augment what it is that just so
Even
that
though
people
there's
don't
another way, another
spend
thing.
all of that 70,000
Very
naira on
unique.
there.
Another thing that the level should be agitating for, like you said, is if there is low cost of living in the economy, that's something that Naira will do a lot for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so this is where we're going to wrap it up this afternoon on the BDTV Roundtable, and I want to say thank you so very much, viewers, for watching. Until we come your way again next week, Wednesday. Thanks. Remain blessed. My name is Joshua Bassey.